twist story.
Aiden Carter, a 20-year-old black man, a sophomore in mathematics at Hamilton College. Aiden is not only intelligent but also has a quick mind, a genius brain in the field of mathematics. However, he is always underestimated by racial prejudices in the harsh academic environment. Aiden was born and raised in a working-class family in a poor neighborhood. His parents did not have a high educational background, but always encouraged their son to pursue knowledge. For Aiden, mathematics is not just a subject, it is a passion, a world where he feels he has real value. But not everyone sees him that way. Professor Margaret Whitmore, a powerful white woman, is a senior lecturer in mathematics at Hamilton College. She is known for being difficult, intolerant of mistakes, and having harsh standards. However, she also has hidden prejudices, always skeptical about the abilities of students of color. Lucas Montgomery, a wealthy white student, the son of a famous professor. Lucas is not only smart, but also arrogant, always looking down on those he thinks are not worthy of this academic environment, especially Aiden. Hamilton College is famous for its difficult courses and high competition. In Professor Whitmore's advanced mathematics class, discrimination comes not only from the lectures, but also from the way she treats each student. Aiden always feels Professor Whitmore's scrutiny every time he raises his hand. She often ignores him, or, if she does answer, her tone is full of doubt. Other students, especially Lucas, often make fun of Aiden when he tries to speak. One day, Professor Whitmore walks into the class with a complicated problem about the Laplace transform. She writes it on the board and turns to look at the class. Who can solve this? Or do I need to lower the standards a little? The whole class bursts into laughter. Lucas quickly raised his hand, but his answer was wrong. Aiden knew the answer but hesitated. Finally, he decided to stand up. When the professor reluctantly allowed it, Aiden stepped up to the board and solved the problem correctly. The class fell silent. Many students couldn't believe their eyes, while Lucas frowned, refusing to accept the truth. Professor Whitmore crossed her arms, her cold eyes observing each number on the board. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she walked to the board, picked up the chalk, and checked Aiden's solution step by step. There were no mistakes. Every calculation was correct. But instead of praising, Whitmore gave a sarcastic smile. An interesting solution. But can you do it again when I increase the challenge? She turned around and wrote a much more difficult problem, this time involving complex integrals that even seniors would have trouble solving. If you're really good, prove it, she said, putting down the chalk. Aiden took a deep breath. He had no choice. He knew he couldn't back down. The class held its breath. Some students were waiting for Aiden to fail, while others watched silently, curious to see if he could do it. Lucas crossed his arms, his eyes smug, as if he was sure Aiden would fumble. But Aiden didn't falter. He stepped forward, picked up the chalk, and began writing. The calculations came quickly, each step clear and coherent. There was not a moment of hesitation, not a single stroke of chalk. His mind worked like a machine. Each stroke of chalk followed the next, forming a complete solution. The class fell into absolute silence again. As Aiden put down the chalk, Professor Whitmore approached again, her eyes still filled with doubt. But as she checked each step, the silence was unusually long. The math was right. No mistakes. She pursed her lips, put the chalk down on the table, and stood in front of the class with her arms crossed. She could no longer deny the truth. Aiden was not just smart, he was a genius. But Whitmore could not let him go so easily. Very well, she said, her tone losing its sarcasm. But the theory on paper doesn't tell the whole story. If you're really good, prove it to the science committee. I propose you enter the National Mathematical Olympiad. The class was in an uproar. This was no longer a simple test. This was a challenge bigger than anyone could have imagined. Aiden took a deep breath, looking Whitmore straight in the eye. I accept. The class exploded. Lucas grimaced, and Whitmore gave a faint smile. She had put Aiden in a bigger fight, where there was only one outcome: victory or utter defeat. Instead of acknowledging Aiden's abilities, Professor Whitmore continues to challenge him with a doctoral-level problem. This is not only a mathematical challenge, but also an was a test to see if Aiden could handle the pressure. The whole class eagerly waited to see if Aiden could pass. Lucas smirked, believing that this time Aiden would fail. But no, Aiden remained calm. He picked up the chalk, looked at the problem, and began to solve it. The room was completely silent. Professor Whitmore crossed his arms, his eyes full of scrutiny. Aiden continued to write step by step, without a single sign of hesitation. When he finished, the professor checked again and realized he was right. Surprise spread throughout the classroom. Some students began to whisper. Many looked at Aiden with different eyes. A few began to realize that they might have misjudged him. But Professor Whitmore did not accept defeat easily. She turned back to the class, her eyes sharp, and wrote a new problem, even more difficult than the last one. This time, the problem required a variety of solutions, combining both theory and practical application. Some students murmured, realizing that even they would have a hard time solving this problem in a short time. Lucas smiled sarcastically. "He's going to fail this time," he whispered to his group of friends. Aiden looked at the problem on the board, his sharp eyes scanning each number. He took a deep breath. He couldn't let them see him hesitate. Once again he stepped forward, holding the chalk. He began to write, a little slower this time, but each step was precise. Some students held their breath as he followed each symbol he wrote. The minutes passed by, but eventually Aiden completed the solution. Once again, the problem was solved correctly. The room was silent. Professor Whitmore couldn't hide his surprise. She looked at each line of the equation, looking for the slightest error, but there was none. A few students clapped, and then the class erupted in chatter. But Whitmore wasn't giving up. She stepped up to the podium, her eyes thoughtful. "Impressive, Aiden, but math isn't just about solving problems. It's about actually competing." She placed a stack of papers on the table. "There's a national math competition. If you're really that good, prove yourself there. If you win, I'll publicly admit I was wrong." The class was buzzing again. The national math competition wasn't for ordinary students. It was a playground for the best. Lucas sneered, crossing his arms. "You can't hide this time, Carter. This competition will take you down." Aiden didn't hesitate. He straightened his back, his gaze unwavering. "I accept the challenge." The murmur in the classroom grew louder. Some students were surprised by Aiden's confidence, while others were skeptical. Professor Whitmore nodded slightly, her eyes sharp as if she were assessing him again. "Very good," she said, her voice calm. "Prove that you are worthy." Aiden took a deep breath. This was no longer a simple test. This was a challenge that would define his entire future. The national math competition was taking place in one of Princeton University's most prestigious halls. Outstanding students from all over the country had gathered, each eager to prove his talent. Among them, Aiden Carter stood silently, his eyes calm but determined. Lucas Montgomery was also present, not hiding his usual confidence and arrogance. "No one can help you this time, Carter," he sneered, crossing his arms and looking at Aiden. Aiden didn't answer, just focused on the stage, where the judges began to announce the rules of the competition. The match consisted of 3 rounds: theoretical mathematics, applied mathematics, and a special, never-before-published problem that required breakthrough thinking. The first round, theoretical mathematics, began. The contestants had to prove complex mathematical theorems within a time limit. Aiden picked up his pen and wrote, each line of reasoning appearing on the page quickly and accurately. When the judges checked his work, they couldn't hide their impression. They were all correct. Lucas also did well in his part, but Aiden's score was still higher. The second round, applied mathematics, was a practical problem about data modeling and solving problems in engineering. This was a round that many contestants had difficulty with, but for Aiden, it was no different from a normal problem. He handled it with absolute confidence, presenting the solution clearly and logically. As the scoreboard updated, Aiden still held the lead, while Lucas began to look worried. Finally, the most important round, the special problem, was announced. This was a problem that had never been seen before, requiring creative thinking and a completely new solution. No formula could help. Only a deep understanding of mathematics could lead to the correct answer. Aiden looked at the problem, his brain working at full capacity. he quickly found a direction that no one had thought of. The pen ran decisively on the paper. Lucas, on the other hand, began to... The pressure was overwhelming. He hesitated, erasing and rewriting many times, while time passed quickly. The bell rang. Time was up. The judges began to grade. The atmosphere in the exam room was heavy. Everyone held their breath waiting for the results. Finally, the scoreboard was announced. The winner of this year's national math competition was Aiden Carter. The hall exploded. Many students clapped their hands in congratulations. Aiden just stood there, took a deep breath, letting this moment sink in. He had proven his worth, not with words, but with undeniable numbers. Lucas lowered his head, not saying a word. He knew that, this time, he could no longer deny Aiden's superiority. In the crowd, Professor Whitmore stood silently. She approached Aiden, her eyes no longer cold like the first day. She nodded, a small but meaningful gesture. "You proved me wrong, Carter," she said, her voice low. "I owe you an apology." Aiden didn't respond right away. He just gave a small smile. He didn't need an apology, because today, he let math speak for him. After the competition ended, the following days at Hamilton College were no longer the same. Aiden Carter was no longer the underrated student. He was a symbol of determination, of perseverance, of undeniable genius. Lucas Montgomery, who had once looked down on him, was no longer as loud as before. His defeat by Aiden was a clear reminder that true talent cannot be overshadowed by prejudice. However, Aiden was not arrogant. He still kept his composure, still sat in his usual row in class, still took careful notes from every lecture. But this time, every time he raised his hand to speak, no one dared to look down on him anymore. Instead, the class listened. One day after class, Professor Whitmore walked up to him. She was no longer as cold as the first day they met. "Carter," she said, her voice calm, "I want to talk." Aiden nodded. They walked out into the hallway where no one else was. Professor Whitmore sighed, her eyes thoughtful. "I was wrong about you. I should never let prejudice cloud someone's ability, and you've proven that beyond doubt." Aiden smiled slightly. "I don't need an apology, Professor. I just want to prove that everyone deserves a fair chance." She nodded, her eyes shining with genuine respect for the first time. "I hope you continue to do well, and if you want, I can recommend you to an advanced research program, a place where you can develop further." It was an offer that Aiden never thought he would receive from the person who once doubted him the most. He thought for a moment and then nodded. "I am honored, Professor." From there, Aiden embarked on a new journey. He not only won a competition, he changed the way people around him viewed a person's true abilities. And that was the most important victory. Aiden Carter's story is not just a story about mathematics or a competition. It is also a journey of overcoming prejudice, conquering oneself, and proving the true value of a person. Prejudice can exist in every field, whether in education, work, or daily life. But true talent will always be recognized if we are persistent and determined enough. Aiden did not let doubtful looks or discrimination stop him. He did not argue, did not refute. He let the results and ability speak for themselves. That helped him change the way even those who looked down on him looked at him. This story also reminds us that justice does not come from promises, but from actions. If you are facing difficulties, do not let prejudice define you. Keep moving forward, because one day, you will be the one to change the game. What do you think about this story? If you were Aiden, what would you do when you faced injustice? Leave a comment below. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to watch more inspiring content. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to watch more inspiring stories.